Well, our moms think we're funny.
Giant Robo, attack!
All right, we are recording.
Hey everyone, this is, oh shit, Can we do it over again?
I guess, yeah.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Alright. It's December 6th, 2020. I'm recording an episode of the Watchmen character breakdown with Acomi.
Hi, I'm Acomi. That's the dialogue within the panel.
Oh, say everybody, it's Turk182, and as I stated, that we are coming back or doing another episode of our character breakdown of the Watchmen.
Yeah.
And we're down to our last two people, which is Rorschach and Ozymandias.
Yeah.
And so we actually had a bit of a discussion here to say, who was, who we're gonna talk about next. And Acomi said, I think we need to end it with Ozymandias. And I was like, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that sounds like that could be right. End it with Ozymandias. Even though I kind of feel like ending it with Rorschach, but I'm like, no, I think ending it with Ozymandias works.
Rorschach is definitely the one I've been looking forward to the most.
I think anybody that's listening to it probably has been waiting for us to get around to Rorschach too.
Yeah. He's definitely my favorite character for sure. But yeah, I mean, just Ozymandias, man. He's got to be the last one.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. And I hate saying that Rorschach is my favorite because
he's not a hero.
Right, and
he's a truly awful character.
But there is so much within him that makes him like a great person.
Yeah.
Or a great character, rather.
Yes,
a great character that if you just tell somebody Rorschach's my favorite, then they see all of the scenes, and
right.
or like the things like whatever happened to that guy, he tried that trick with Rorschach and he threw him down an elevator shaft, those kind of things there. And I kind of feel like this is going to be a longer episode too.
Oh, absolutely. So buckle the fuck up, kiddies. Get some carrot sticks and some orange juice.
And some orange slices.
I'm going to just hit the bathroom now because we're in this for the long haul.
So, because the thing with Rorschach is for someone to really understand what you like about him, you have to really break the character down, and that takes too much, So, a true Watchmen fan, when you say Rorschach, they hope they would understand what you mean by that, but casual Watchmen fan is probably not. But I do have to say that
I would say people who only watched the movie without reading the book would have a difficult time getting it.
Yeah. And, when we talked before, I was like, I can identify with Dr. Manhattan, but I can also identify with Rorschach. And I hate to say it. I mean, okay, here's the thing. I can identify with everybody.
Oh, yeah. I think in some capacity or another. I
think Laurie's the one I can't identify with as much just because I haven't had that upbringing, being forced or pushed into something that I didn't want to be a part of.
God damn, I can relate to that.
And then realizing that I need it, but do I need it because of what you did to me?
Right.
Or is it because of yes, I need it because you were right all along. This was what I needed to be.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, but with Rorschach, I can definitely identify with Rorschach. Sometimes, my sense of justice kind of runs very gray. Ozymandias, Dr. Manhattan, I can definitely identify with him. Just my capacity to, God, I hate that I get so real in this podcast, but that my ability to just completely just disregard emotion and just go logical. Which is, I always want to say it's more of a gift, but I think it's also, a great curse too. But given, if I had to make a choice, which one, I'm always going to go logical,
Right.
So, and then Dan, I hate to say it, but who can't? It's almost like a Fight Club thing, it's like the whole, we're the mill children of history. Like, it's like who can't relate to Dan? I mean,
right.
This sense of longing and purpose and wanting to be someone, not going to be someone great as in like, oh, I want to be an influencer, but someone to be someone great, someone that does something that, that they can be proud of, that again, it helps other people, or to be seen as like a, I don't want to say a hero, but as
something with purpose, to feel like you have a place in the world. Yeah. I mean, I think that any comic book fan can relate to Rorschach. We've talked about this before. We and Wallcrawler has agreed with us. We as comic book fans have a really strong sense of right and wrong.
Yes.
And, maybe there is some wiggle room within what I would consider moral versus what you would consider moral. But for us, we have this black and white concept of this is wrong, this needs to be dealt with. And we tend to really buck against seeing what we see as injustice more so than the average person, I think. And I think that falls into a lot of comic book people. I think, we've talked about the sense of unity that you feel at a Comic-Con, that, you've got, oh, these are my people. And I think...
home.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think a lot, not all, definitely not all, but a lot of comic book and superhero fans feel that sense of conviction and right and wrong, and that's why everybody kind of gravitates towards Rorschach.
Yeah. And you've got some people that are, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, because, I'm definitely a Lobo fan.
I love Lobo.
and I'm a passing Punisher fan. But the people that tend to gravitate more towards those kind of people, and then they put Rorschach in there too. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, because all those characters do have a very strong moral center.
Yeah.
That sometimes it's buried so deep within their onion that that's kind of hard to see, and some people don't get past past the layers.
Right. Yeah. Everybody thinks that Lobo is completely amoral, but his word is his bind.
Yeah. He
can't break his promises.
I mean, and a guy that cares about space dolphins. I mean, he's obviously not that bad of a person if he's like, hey, whatever else you do, don't fuck with space dolphins, right?
Yeah. He drove straight to hell to kill the devil for killing a dolphin.
So, but like I said, you take someone like Rorschach, and I can relate a great deal to Ozymandias too, and I think that's also part of the whole. I think for me, those Ozymandias and Dr. Manhattan are very closely intertwined with me. The whole idea of like knowledge and how knowledge can like separate you from other people and make it hard to relate with people. It's I was talking to someone the other day, and I was talking about that scene from Infinity War when Thanos says to Stark, and he calls his name, and he's he's shocked that he knows who he is, and he's like, "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge," and that's such a powerful line, to be cursed with knowledge. And it's like it is, because it is a curse, because when someone that has knowledge, and I'm not putting myself out there to be like some like super genius, whatever, but for anybody,
stool.
What'd you say?
On a pedal stool.
But someone that is cursed with knowledge has to basically bear like the weight of everything that you don't know.
Yeah.
And they're basically at that point charged with protecting you from all the stuff that you don't know, either because you don't know it or because you don't have the capacity to know it. And I'm not saying that in a rude way, but like people are stupid, but not everybody is an astrophysicist,
Right.
And that's something that you just can't, not everybody can learn. Not everybody can understand it. And for the people that do understand it, and they understand everything that comes with it and all the dangers that come with it and the perils and like what has to be done to protect protect everyone else, that's a lot of weight that 8 to 10% of the public has, and you have to carry that around with you, and you can't explain to anybody, why why your shoulders hurt so much, and that's the thing, you have to carry it around basically in silence. That's that's tough, and that can cause you to alienate because there's no one else that can identify or relate, or very few people.
It makes you very withdrawn,
and so
it's even in the Bible. Whoever adds to his knowledge adds to his sorrows. And it's the exact thing. And
I'm not sure if we've talked about this on podcasts, maybe once before, but there is a like the suicide rate among super intelligent people is fairly high because of that, and so that's a big deal. And getting all back to the whole thing is like, Ozymandias and Dr. Manhattan are people who have great knowledge, and it doesn't really matter what your great knowledge is in. It could be something really superficial, like, me and like my, pop culture and TV shows and stuff like that. Right. But if that's where my interests lie, that still does alienate me from people when I say things, like, that's milk and eggs, bitch. And then my ex-girlfriend like hits me and be like, why are you being an asshole? I'm like, I'm not. I'm like, it's not my fault you haven't seen that movie. It's also not your fault that you haven't seen that movie either, right? So, so I can relate to them as well. But But I think it really kind of more towards my center. I think I'm kind of torn between like a Rorschach and a Dan.
Right.
Because I do want the world to be better, and I want people to be better.
Right, yeah.
And
I know I mentioned during our comedian episode that the older I get, the more I kind of relate to him more so than Rorschach.
Who, Dan?
No, to the comedian.
You say so around comedian episode.
Just like this whole concept of, it's all a fucking joke. We're basically just pawns in the game. But, I mean, Rorschach I've always kind of gravitated towards because, as you know, I'm a very black and white thinker. I'm not fond of the idea of gray areas in like mindsets and worldviews and thinking. So I've always just kind of gravitated towards Rorschach on that. And of course, I think we've talked about this in like every episode that like, Alan Moore kind of built Rorschach around Steve Ditko and The Question and Mr. A. And like Ditko always has these very black and white objectivist characters. And when somebody asked Ditko if he'd read Watchmen and knew about Rorschach, he was like, oh yeah, Rorschach, that's the guy who's the Question but crazy. It's like, no, he's just literally the Question. Like, there is actually no difference between Rorschach and Mr. A if you really look at it. Like, the first Mr. A story I read, he saves some girl from the bad guy, but then he lets her die because, like, yes, but you doubted in the power of good, and that's wrong, and that's immoral. It's like, dude, fucking calm down.
It's so funny when people can't, I'm going to take this back to Fight Club, which is the narrator. Okay, so I say that for all my true Fight Club people out there, and now for everybody else, I'll say Jack. Jack can't stand Marla. He does not like her at all. I mean, and it's weird because Marla sees something that he doesn't, and all the way up to the point where she's like, you know what, fuck you, man. I'm through. I can't deal with you anymore. And then she says, I've tried and I've tried and I've tried. There's so many things I like about you and all this kind of stuff. But she recognizes right away the thing that he doesn't, which is that they're alike. And he rejects that with her because when he sees that mirror, he sees everything that he doesn't like about himself. Instead of seeing that we have common interests and that we could be better as a whole, he turns against it.
That we're equally lost.
Right. And when you mentioned that Ditko thing, that's the first thing I think of. It was like, oh, Rorschach, no, he's like him, but he's crazy. It's like, you think, no, you don't see that they're exactly alike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the exact same thing as the narrator and Marla of just like, yeah, no, you're like me, but you're crazy. And it's like, yeah, you don't have the same like restraints that I do. And it's like, you just don't see it.
No, you're crazy, and we simply do not have time for this crap.
Yeah, I think one of the most relatable things as far as the narrator and Marla for me is the first time that she spends the night with Tyler, and she comes downstairs. She's like, man, I can't believe anything about last night. And he just feels like there's so much betrayal in his voice as he says, this is my house. What are you doing in my house? It's like, this is my space to get away from you, to get away from what I hate about the world, and you're fucking here. What are you doing in my house? It's like, man, I can really relate to that shit.
It's so, because it's like, it starts off with the condom in the toilet, and it's like, that, and then he's like, and Tyler's room was shut. And his like door was shut. Tyler's door was never shut. It's like, wait, we're boys. Like, why? What are you hiding from me now? All of a sudden, like, this is weird. And it's like, oh, there's a condom, and then there's Marlon. He's like, what? No. It's like, I mean, I purposely didn't call you back because I don't want to deal with you. And then, it's like, what, you supposed to be dead?
I should have just driven over there, taken 45 minutes out of my life to watch Marla die, and none of this would have happened. Yeah, just the sheer level of, like, this can't be happening because this is my house. We've talked about this with John Wick, of like, there's some shit you just don't do to a man.
Right.
And, people hate me bringing that stuff up, but it's like, Fight Club is a man's movie. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, as a man, you don't do the shit that they did to John Wick. And it, like, I've never talked to a man who has watched John Wick and thought, he overreacted. It's like, no, if they did what they did to my house, to my dog, to my belongings, I would have reacted in the same way. I might not be capable of killing every fucking one of them, but I would sure want to.
Right.
It's like, that's like such an understandable response for like a dude to get, and it's the same kind of thing there.
It's funny. We're kind of getting away from Rorschach, but not really, because we're kind of laying down like the groundwork for all these other people that kind of like have the same kind of like moral compass in a sense.
Yeah.
But it's they always say Pulp Fiction is like it's like, what, you still got your Malibu? He's like, yeah, what happened? Like, somebody keyed it, it's like, it's like, I wish I could have caught him doing it. It would have been worth them doing it for me catching him doing it. It's like, you just don't fuck with a man's vehicle. You just don't do it, and now that they take his car, and even that for John Wick wasn't that big of a deal, even though in John Wick 2, he's like, he gets his car back. He's like, okay, he fixed my car. But that wasn't the sole thing. It was like, you killed my dog, and my dog meant a lot to me, and all this other stuff. And it's like, I mean, and it's like, obviously they didn't know. Not that it matters. They were pieces of shit. Not that they knew, but it's like, this is the day after my wife's funeral. Like, I haven't even had a chance to even think about grieving the day after her funeral, and you guys do this shit, and it's like all of that. But the thing is, going to the man that because I mean, his house and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that wasn't that important to him. Obviously, the dog was what was most important. But then when the car shows up at John Leguizamo's shop, and he's like, oh shit. It's like, he doesn't even know anything else about what happened. It's like, do you know whose car this is? Like, you could have done anything else to this guy. You could have stolen his mail. You could have taken packages off his porch. It's like, you could have done anything, but you stole his car, and I find out that, oh shit, you killed his dog too. But like,
what I love about it is that nobody tries to protect those guys. Every time they say, you did what to who? Oh, you're fucked. Yeah. You're not walking out of this alive. Like, there's never any doubt that it's like, oh, he's gonna get you.
And I kind of feel for, not to make this John Wick up so bad, I kind of feel for the father, because he's trapped in this thing where I have to like try to protect my son, even though I know that it's pointless. I have to try. And I really have to try with everything I have. I really have to put forth a serious effort, even though I know that's just going to fuck me over.
Yeah.
And now I say, because it's going to fuck me, like, I have to try, and because I'm going to have to try, it's going to fuck me over, which means I really have to try now, because now I'm embroiled in this too.
Yep.
When the thing that you really need to do is be like, hey, John, I killed him for you. I'm sorry to take away, like the glory of this, this moment, and to rob you of your vengeance, but I took care of him for you, because honestly, he fucked up. Kid or no kid, he fucked up. And if I don't do this, everything around me is going to suffer.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, but, like, he was kind of torn, and he did what he thought was the right thing to do from a family perspective. But what he really should have done was put a bullet in the kid's head and be I'm sorry, John.
He should have just chained the kid up and hand delivered him to Wick. So it's like, I don't want to take this from you, so here. Because otherwise this is going to cost me literally millions, and I can't hire that many new guys. So.
Right, so...
But yeah, so Rorschach... Yeah, Watchmen is a lot like Fight Club in that I get something new from it every time I go through the story.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you a question though. Do you sometimes find, because I know you do your Fight Club watch every birthday.
Every birthday.
Do you ever find yourself being like, I don't, because I'm going to find something new, that you may be a little trepidatious about watching it because there's like a new aspect that's going to like key into you. You're going to see something new that you're going to be like, oh man, like now it's digging in deeper. Like maybe like I just want to enjoy it on this level, but I know if I watch it again, it's going to just worm its way deeper into me.
Usually if I just want to watch it for shits and giggles and pure enjoyment, then I don't do it around my birthday.
Okay.
It'll usually be like, in the middle of the year, and there's times where I'll still find something new in there, but it's not as much of a religious happening, so to speak, for me to do it like, say July or something.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like, I always, like, it's not just something where it's like, oh yeah, I'll just pop this in and do it while I'm drawing or whatever. It's like, no, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to pay attention, I got myself a little bit of whiskey, like, this is my zone here, so. But yeah, one thing I noticed about Rorschach this read-through is that he's kind of got a lot of double standards. That's one thing I noticed. Because Rorschach always talks about how the rest of the city's a bunch of leeches and how, how he's so superior to everybody. And, of course, his opening dialogue is so good. And he talks about how, everybody's just going to be drowning in blood, basically, and looking up at him and saying, help us. And he's going to look down and whisper, no. But Rorschach is kind of a leech on society.
Well, I will say that Rorschach doesn't have a job.
Right.
So we don't know where he gets his money from. He obviously...
Well, he sure as hell doesn't pay his rent because the landlord bitches about it.
And I would say this. When it comes to the landlord, though, I think in his defense, not that it doesn't make it a double standard, but in his defense, though, he's like, yeah, I'm not paying for this because you're a piece of shit and you don't take care of anything here. And so, like, for what you provide, it's not really worth paying for.
Yeah. Which fits in with the objectivist mindset that Rorschach has. So, like, it's in keeping with his worldview.
And I would say that I think that when we say he doesn't have a job, like, where does he get his money from? I think the people that he beats up that are bad people, I think he robs them.
100%. And that's the thing. Like, when Dan finally loses his shit and is just like, you know what? I've had it with you. And you just, like, kind of chews him out. One of the things he says is you live off of other people.
Right.
Like, you break into people's houses, you eat their beans, you eat their cereal. It's like you are just kind of a leech on society.
And I'm not trying to defend Rorschach in this regard, but at the same time, though, people let him. Now, they let him out of fear, right?
Yeah,
so that's part of the reason why they let him, but...
Yeah, because nobody wants to call him out for his crazy.
But then even Dan won't do it. I mean, he kicks open Dan's door and breaks the lock.
3 times.
Right? and Dan never once calls him. And here's the other part of it, too. When after he breaks in the first time and he gives him he eats the beans, right? and we keep talking about the beans, but there's the other part that we missed too. Are the sugar cubes.
Yeah,
he just eats like the sugar cubes, just crunch, crunch, crunch. I mean, here's a guy just running off of just nothing but like just processed food and sugar.
It's like it's a wonder that he's in any kind of shape to fight.
Find the way it is, but. When he leaves, Dan takes him out the back way, and he's like, "Yo, yeah, there's an access tunnel." He's like, "Yeah, I remember." What, you could have come in that way too.
Yeah,
you could have come in that way instead of breaking my lock, but you didn't.
But you had to be a dick about it.
But also because even Dan won't call him out on his shit. Right? Like, stop breaking my fucking lock.
But like the other double standard I caught from Rorschach is, his whole thing. Oh, there's black and there's white, there's wrong and there's right. I'll never compromise. And he says multiple times throughout the book, I'll never compromise. But then when Laurie's like, I can't believe you're upset about the comedian dying after you tried to rape my mother. And he's like, I'm not here to pass judgment on the moral lapses of a patriot. It's like, yeah, but he tried to rape her, dude. It's like, he's not denying that it happened. It's just, it was a moral lapse.
Well, I would say this, though. And with that one, he's like, that happened, but that has nothing to do with him being murdered.
Right, right.
This is something that happened, a while back, and that was that your mom apparently is okay with it, or she, whatever however she handled it.
Right,
but
right.
My job here, I'm trying to think, what's the, there's a movie called Thick as Thieves, and I don't think you've seen it with me.
Yeah,
I love Thick as Thieves. It's really good. Alec Baldwin, Michael Jai White, Andre Brower, Arquette. No, not Arquette. Shit, I can't think of her name now. Rebecca De Mornay. And it's got a great cast of people too, right? It's really, really good. But Rebecca De Mornay goes to Michael Jai White's character. She's a cop, and he's a low-level thug, or runs a criminal, like a small-time criminal empire. He's like, so you here to, find out like who burned all my cars? She's like, no, I'm working this murder case with these two cops. She's like, I don't care about that. She's like, that's some other cop's problem. Job is to find out who did that. So it's like, I'm working this case right here. And it's like, for me, I take Rorschach as like, yeah, I get that, but that's somebody else's thing to handle that. This guy was murdered, which, for as far as I know, had nothing to do with that.
Right.
So somebody murdered him, and I want to solve that crime and get that murder put away. So yeah, that happened, but I shouldn't just let this murder go because of that. If it was tied to it, then obviously that makes sense. But in this case,
Yeah, which again makes sense with the whole objectivist thing.
Right.
There's the line. I'm not here to speculate on the moral lapses of men who died in their country's service. I came to warn you. Like, he's just... It kind of goes in, like, Rorschach is also somewhat unemotional, or he tries to be, I guess.
Yeah, he tries to be.
But he's someone who kind of gets blindsided by his emotions a lot.
Yeah, and we mentioned this in the other one we were talking about the difference between Walter Kovacs and Rorschach. It's I think Rorschach has emotions, and the reason he can, it almost kind of goes to Jojo Cutter. It's like the only reason he can have emotions is because he's hidden behind that mask. Yeah. Where Walter does not have emotions. And you see him walk, every time you see him, he's expressionless.
The only time you really see an expression from Kovacs is the first time they take the mask off. And he says, "Give me back my face!"
And that's because they're taking it off. So that's really more Rorschach expressing that than it is Kovacs.
Yeah. He hasn't had a chance to, like, exit his inward, so to speak.
Right. So, getting into Rorschach, like, kind of really getting into him, you've got two different people, as we said. You've got Rorschach and you've got Kovacs. And we were talking just now, I had a thought, like, why wouldn't Rorschach come in through the old service tunnel?
Yeah.
And it was shortly after I said, I was like, okay, well, that's why. That service tunnel leads into the owl cave.
Yeah. And that's not part of Dan's life.
Right, that's not part of his life anymore. Dan lives above that. Yeah. I'm going to see Dan, not the night owl. The night owl is not here anymore. So I'm breaking into Dan's house.
Yep.
I'm not going to go into the night owl's place because that's not who I came to see. This guy doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, and that is something I do have to say in favor of Rorschach, is that he does respect boundaries when they're set.
Yes.
Because when he goes to warn John and Laurie, he addresses Laurie as Miss Jupiter, built all around her superhero codename. She says, "Don't call me that, it's Euspecic." And from there on, he calls her Euspecic the whole rest of the book. There's no point where he's going to double down on that. It's like, fine, you don't want to be Miss Jupiter? You're not Miss Jupiter. And I'll never put you on that level again.
And he never calls her Laurie either.
Yeah.
And
I think Rorschach is scared of women. I'm pretty sure.
I think he has. I think he does have like I think he has a love-hate relationship for women. Like he cares about them because he sees them as being I'm not going to say weak, but he sees them as being vulnerable.
Yeah. I think he sees them as like something to be protected. It's the whole chivalry mindset. But
at the same time, though, like he sees them as something to be protected, and that they're more vulnerable to all the threats that are out there. But at the same time, he knows that if they're not protected, they can become very callous. Right. Just like his mother. And I want to talk more about Rorschach before I get into his. How he came to be.
Yeah. And we'll have to talk, of course, about his therapist.
Yeah, of course. But for Rorschach, here's a guy that protects the city. They talk about how, and we mentioned this in the other one, where when they said, okay, mass vigilantes, and that's it, you're done, and Rorschach just said, he just left a body on the street with a sign that said never. And that was it.
God, I love that scene.
But they also don't go after him either. So I think it's one of those things where we're not going to go after him because, one, we know he's extremely dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Two, we know that he only goes after certain people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, here's an element of crime that we try to stay away from because it is so thick and grimy. And we've got this guy out here who is dispensing justice in a way that we can't.
Right.
People fear Rorschach.
Yep.
And so I got to go to the bar, the bar scene.
Oh God, the bar scene, yeah.
Which is
because that stupid fucker was new in town.
That is, and it's just so funny because obviously this guy is trying to be tough.
Yeah.
And what I love about that scene is that, like I said, when people if you look at the cops, from my perspective, you look at them and they're like, okay, here's a guy that criminals fear. They don't fear police the same way that they fear Rorschach because the police can't go where he goes.
Right.
They can't do what he does, and that makes it and so that makes it more difficult for us to really kind of get in there and instill that fear. What are we going to do? We're going to put him in prison, and then they're going to just put him in jail, and then they're going to get back out again, right?
Yeah.
And so and that's kind of thing among criminals. As I talk, I've hung around criminals a lot, but among criminals, it's almost this thing yeah, this is my third time in, or I just got out again. It's like, yeah, there he goes. Yeah, I've been back in the prison again, or back in jail again. No big deal. And it's almost like a bragging right of sorts. It's like a rite of passage. Like now I'm back in there again, and even sometimes you hear it, amongst let's say the police or whatever. It's like, oh, so I see you're back again. It's like,
right, yeah. Oh, you're a two-timer, aren't you?
Right. So that doesn't really do anything. But then you've got Rorschach, who is, and I'm trying to find that damn scene. I thought it was earlier on, but
chapter 1, page 15.
Is it? Okay.
Yep.
I was going to say I thought it was early on, but then missed it. Thank you. So it's right after he visits Dan.
Yep.
Okay. Where, Rorschach, talks about, how he's got to find out who killed him, and he goes into Happy Harry's bar, and, he walks in, and everybody stops, and they're like, oh shit. Here's Rorschach. If a police officer went in there, right, it wouldn't be the same.
Right, yeah.
And so I think the police give him a lot of leeway in that sense because they know that he instills fear in a this part of the city that they can't,
mm-hmm.
and he can do it as one person. They have to come in there as a full force, to get one person. He comes in there as one person, so it's like he kind of does that for us. Yes, he's if we have to bring him down because he's obviously he's a criminal, we will. But as of right now, we're kind of turn a blind eye because if they really wanted to go after him, they could go after him, right? Yeah. They really could, but they're not. That's creepy.
Yeah. Cats.
So, but he goes in the bar and everybody is just scared. And I love when he goes in there and the bartender is like, he just started, he's like, Rorschach. And he's like, and I just love this because Rorschach goes, I'm fine, Happy Harry. Yourself? He goes, fine. I'm fine. He goes, and I'm glad you're fine too. And oh God, please don't kill anybody. He owns and runs a bar that is frequented by criminals, right? And this guy just has him stuttering like a baby.
And he knows. It's like, oh, well, Rorschach's here. Somebody's probably going to die tonight.
And then the two guys are sitting at the bar, and the one that makes the comment about Rorschach, and his partner gets up in the bar, and he's just like, I gotta take a leak.
Yeah, it's like, there's no washing your friend's back here. It's like, oh, fuck, dude, you done it.
And then Rorschach just starts to torture the guy. We're talking about, either if they're not hardened criminals, right, then these are people that are, seen some shit,
Mm-hmm.
You're like dock workers and shit like that,
Yeah.
And they're all just wide-eyed and the one guy goes, please, we don't know anything, just leave it alone. These are people that wouldn't normally tell you to leave somebody alone that they don't know, but they're like, please leave him alone. We don't know anything, just stop. That is amazing. That's so, and again, I'm not trying to make him seem like he's such an awesome person, but I mean,
it's badass.
It is badass.
It's not good. It's not something you'd ever see Superman do, but it's badass. And I've talked about this before. One reason I love Samuel L. Jackson and Uma Thurman so much is because they can just control a scene. They're just really good at making it seem like their characters are just in complete control of the entire room when they're in a scene. Yep. And Rorschach is that way, where he walks into the bar, he fucking owns it. Everybody is under his spell. He breaks this guy's finger, and he's like, okay, attention everybody, I've just broken this man's little finger. Who killed Edward Blake? Nobody says anything. And his index finger. Okay, who killed Edward Blake? It's like, it's that level of control. It's the same reason why I like the bad guys in Breaking Bad so much, because they just have this level of control where it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna break down exactly everything I know about you, and here's why you can't get a step ahead of me, period. Because I'm already 4 dimensions ahead of you.
And, Rorschach also breaks into a military research facility with armed guards.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah. Like no big deal. He just breaks right on in. So
one thing I always liked about Rorschach is the first time after he talks to Moloch, and he's just heading down the street, and all the prostitutes are trying to seduce him. Man, my brain just died right there. But he says, was offered Swedish love and French love, but not American love. American love like Coke and green glass bottles. They don't make it anymore. He's just like, he's got such a... He just wants like that old-timey morality kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like he's missing the 30s and 40s sort of mindset.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, you've seen No Country for Old Men?
Not yet. But I hear it's really good.
Oh God, it's beautiful. But in No Country, the end of because the movie takes place, was it 1979 or I think it's 1979. Mm-hmm. And you see the same thing with this in Boogie Nights too, because the New Year's Eve party in 1979 Boogie Nights is just like this. But at the end of it, after everything that's happened, Tommy Lee Jones's character is talking to his wife about the dream he had, and then he's he says, I had this dream. It's like, I was killed my father. He was on a horse, is waiting for me, and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, "What do you think of me?" It's like, it's like nothing. It's just a dream. And then it just goes black. And it's like the thing is, because he retires at that point. He's done after this last job. He retires, but it was up until this point. There was this belief that there were good guys and there were bad guys. And the good guys, outnumbered the bad guys. And for the most part, the bad guys always got their due,
Right.
Sometimes the bad guys are really bad, but eventually, they were caught.
Right.
They was coming to them. But after this thing, it's like, this is a brand new decade. It's a brand new year, brand new decade, and things aren't like they were before. It's like, now we're entering a territory where the bad guys can get away. The cops can't always stop them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and at that point, it's like, he retires, and it's like, this is not a world I can be a part of anymore in this capacity. Right. And I think Rorschach's the same, where it's like, he watched everything kind of start to turn, and he was like, I want for a simpler time, and maybe even that thing he's saying before Dr. Manhattan, a time when when there was such thing as justice and righteousness, and bad things happen, but people were caught and they paid for their crimes, but now we have things like this where the crimes can go completely unpunished, right, which is one of the things that made him into. Which is one of the things that had him first put on the mask, right? The
and Kitty Genovese thing,
right? And it's this old it's almost in a sense where I don't necessarily want to do this, but I have to do this, right? Because you can wanting a simpler time is great, but that time will never come back, right? Yeah, and if you try to play by those rules, which I learned the hard way, you try to play by those rules, it gets you nowhere. Mm-hmm. So I'm the person that you've created, society has created, and I'm not necessarily happy about it, but here I am. Right, yeah. And I'm doing the job that you've basically asked me to do, even though you didn't technically ask me to do it, but, the times change. You need someone to change with it.
Yeah.
And that's me.
I mean, it's just the whole thing that he just accepts that humanity is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's why his opening diatribe is all about, it's like, this city's garbage. People are going to realize their wrongdoing, and then they're going to want me to help them, and at that point it'll be too late.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. You know what you're saying is like his whole thing is like, and I'll whisper no. It's not because I'm unwilling, but when I needed your help to keep things from getting to this point,
yep,
you didn't want to help me, but now you're like, oh, please save me. It's like, why? You contributed to all of this.
Yeah,
I gave you a chance to not, and you turned me away. Mm-hmm. And I'm like,
you had every opportunity to do right, and you chose not to.
Right. And now you're like, oh, all the batch is coming down. I'm like, yeah, it sure is.
It sucks, doesn't it?
So here's this one page here from like the Minutemen meeting, the one where comedian burns up the whole like the
city map. Yeah.
Well, I was trying to think. It's a map. It was just like a plan of like everything that was going on, like all the different things that. It's a city map of the country. The country.
Yeah, showing like different crime waves and stuff.
And but Rorschach says in there, he says, and when we look at Rorschach here, he's very clean from what you can see. Even his stance, like his coat is not buttoned all the way down like you normally see. Yep. It's open. He's got his hand in his pocket, and he says, obviously, I agree, but a group this size seems more like a publicity exercise somehow. It's too big and unwieldy.
Yeah, he's not speaking in the broken English that he usually does.
Right.
The short, choppy sentences.
Right, because he's not a broken man there.
Yeah, it was pre-kidnapping.
Right, and he even says here, he says, why the crime busters? That's like a question he asked, like, why you want to call themselves the crime busters? I mean, but yeah, that's still a guy that's thinking, yeah, we busted some heads on the docks and all this stuff, and we, kind of, it's almost like it's kind of like a game where,
yeah.
We know you guys are going to do this stuff. You know that, we're going to try to stop you. We go down there, we bust up some things, we stop your racket this time. You're going to come back and we're going to do this, but, it's kind of maintaining a balance.
Yeah, and he even tells the psychiatrist, when I first started, I wasn't Rorschach. I was too easy on the criminals. I'd let him go. I'd give him a warning. I'd put him in jail, whatever. It wasn't until the kidnapping where he just realized, like, there's no redeeming this.
Right. And I think what he realizes that where he thought there was a balance because he wasn't, I guess, going to the extremes that he needed to. Yeah. There really wasn't a balance. He thought it was like, okay, you did this, I did this, and, now we're back to even. But those people kept coming. Right, and every time they continued to keep coming, other people saw it was like, oh, well, this guy's not going to kill you. He's not going to do this. He's not going to do that. So in a sense, like, it's like, well, hell, and it's like, I can do that too. So then it starts to get out of balance. But all he sees is that, these people are doing this, I stop them or whatever for the most part, and I'm maintaining a balance. It's like, yeah, but no, the criminals are starting to overrun you as far as numbers go.
It's like they don't fix anything. Like, they don't correct their ways. And I know you're not crazy about the Christmas Vacation movie, but when Clark hits that point where he just gives zero fucks anymore and he just gets the chainsaw, and so he cuts down the tree in their front yard, and they're like, wasn't that a bit extreme? He's like, no, we needed a Christmas tree. I got us a Christmas tree. Problem solved. So he just sets it up in the front yard, and then as he walks by the banister's rickety, so he just cuts through the banister. He's like, fix the banister. It's like, that's the point that Rorschach's at, where it's like, no, this guy committed a crime. Now I made it so he will never commit a crime again. Problem solved.
Right. There you go.
This is my favorite panel of Rorschach, is the scene while he's talking to the psychiatrist, and you see that the guy was spray painting who watches the Watchmen, and there's just a splat where he just punched the guy out, and he's walking away. Everything about that panel is beautiful to me. The framing, all that, so good.
And that was, that's, because you see in that same panel, it's, like there's the newspaper that says the Keene Act passed. So it's like, that's right when they were like, you can't be a hero anymore. Yep. And he's like, fuck you. Yes, I can.
Just fucking dropped the guy just because he was spray painting.
Where are we at, by the way?
We are 45 minutes in. We have barely gotten into
So you want a
Kovacs.
two-parter this one?
Do we want a two-parter? I'm fine with that, yeah.
Yeah, because
We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, so
We knew this would happen.
yeah, we were expecting this. But like I said, it's when you're talking about Rorschach, you have to lay down the foundation of who he is. You can't just say, yeah, Rorschach is awesome, and then like name off all these awesome, what we see as awesome things that he did. It's like, no, there's more to that you really have to kind of break down and understand.
Right.
And so yeah, so we'll call this Rorschach Part 1.
Yeah, works for me.
All right. And then we will be back with Rorschach Part 2.
Absolutely. So check us out next time, babies.
Yeah, my name is Turk182.
And I'm Acomi.
And, we all long for the days of when times are simpler and, criminals got what was coming to them. And so whenever I have that longing for those old days, that's when I always pull out a bottle of nostalgia for men.
I just get some Coke in a green glass bottle.
All right. Well, catch you all next time for our Watchmen character breakdown, Rorschach Part 2.
Yeah. Later, y'all.
Zang, yo.
Right there, folks. That was Our Moms Think We're Funny. Let's give them a hand.